In this presentation today, we'll be looking at just a few of the new fast and flexible conceptual modeling tools found in both Formz 7 and in Bonsai 3D. Our goal here is to show how you can quickly get started sketching your conceptual model using only the Reshape, Offset Segment, Offset Outline, and the 3D Derivative Extrusion tool. Now, as an example, we'll show you how you can build your own modern residence by starting with just a cube, then reshaping and sculpting it into what you want. We'll also explore some hidden ways that you can use these tools, which will further expand the already powerful nature of these tools, adding even more functionality. With that, let's launch Formz and begin our 30-minute model. All right, now as we launch Formz, this is being done in Formz 7, but all the same tool functionality that I'll show in this presentation today is also available in Bonsai. Now, of course, of all the different tools that are here that are available, we're only going to use a few today. And actually, I created a little customized palette here. That customization feature is available in Formz 7, which allows you to create your own palette. So I've added just the tools that we're going to be using today. But all these tools are available in both Formz and Bonsai. All right, with that, let's begin the conceptualization of our contemporary residence. We'll begin by just creating a simple box. So I'll use the 2D rectangle tool, and I'm going to create a rectangular box here. And of course, I can type in numbers at any time or just eyeball that. You can see the numeric information is up there at top, and I can always type in numbers later if I want also. All right, at this point, let's say that is the main living room area. So what we'll do is maybe use the offset segment tool, offset a segment on any face of the object. I can give it any distance if I want. We can use the Reshape tool. Just simply click on any face, and you can reshape the object, reshape it inward to subtract volume, and reshape it outward to add volume to the object. Let's use Offset Segment tool again. I'll be using the key shortcuts, so I'll be flipping through these tools pretty fast, so just look up on top if you're wondering what the current active tool is. Select the Reshape tool and reshape this section out. So I think you get the idea of how you can start with the box and start to sculpt the different spaces of your design. Now let's say if this is the main living room area, let's say this volume here represents the vestibule or the entranceway into that area. So let's put a little porch right here. So once again, we use the Offset Segment tool, and then we'll just reshape again to pull that section out. All right, now at this point, let's say we want to add a second story to this. Well, let's use Offset Segment again. And notice with the Offset Segment tool, it is extending to the boundary of that face. And you can see that there's options inside the tool options here, which you can turn on or off the extended boundary option and also the insert option also. So with that, and I can snap right to the edge here, and you notice that if I offset the segment, snap it right there, it doesn't add a coincident edge there. It actually cleans up that geometry, so it only adds a little edge right in that area based on where I click. So now I can use the Reshape tool and bring up the second story. Let's raise that up a little higher, maybe something like that maybe. All right, now at this point, let's create some kind of a roof or overhang over the vestibule. And so I'll use the Offset Segment tool again, and I'm going to reduce my grid snap down just a little bit, maybe make that 6 inches. So I'll take this existing edge that's already there, offset that, and then reshape that to create the nice little overhang. Now also notice that if I snap right to that existing face, the reshape operation is a real-time Boolean function, so it is healing that geometry and resolving the true solid nature of that solid object. But in this case, I want to actually have a little overhang there, so I'm going to swing to a side view here and just extend that as far as I want, maybe something like that. Okay, we have a nice little overhang for the roof over the front entrance of our space. Now at this point, I want to bring this roof back a little bit and have it flush with our porch. Now if I try to reshape this thing now, I get this whole face boundary here. So to get just that area, I'm going to use the Offset Segment tool again. Click and drag, snap to the vertical edge there, and now I've inserted an edge just in that area. So if I use the Reshape tool, you can see it's applied just to that area. And as I reshape the face inward, I can snap the cursor to the edge of the front porch and click the mouse so that it's playing with the front porch area right there. That's how easily we can get things to be lined up. All right, now as we continue on with our design, let's say we want to put a little garage area here. So let's use the Reshape tool to expand that part of the building out just a little bit. And we're going to create a roof just like this area here and place it on top of the garage. Now what I'm going to do is use the Offset Segment tool again, click on this edge and drag it down along the face. And to make sure it's at the same elevation, I'm going to move my cursor over here, snap right on that edge, and now you can see that that's at the same elevation. Let's do that again from the bottom edge. Snap the cursor on this edge, click, and you can see that that offset segment maintains itself on that face of the object. So now those new segments are at the same elevation as the other parts of our model over here. And then we can just simply use the Reshape tool to reshape that out, snap to the vertical edge here, and all that geometry is healed because of the real-time booleans that are there. Pretty neat, huh? All right, let's add some more detail on the side here. Let's say we want to put maybe some kind of little overhang up here. I would like to show that you can actually offset multiple segments at the same time. So you just hold down the Shift key, and now I can select maybe two edges at the same time and offset them both simultaneously. So let's pull both those out a little bit like that, and then use the Reshape tool to add a little detail on the side of our building that looks like this. All right, let's extend the roof, this area, flush with that new detail that we've just added. So we use the offset segment tool again, snap to that edge, take this new edge, pull it up, snap to that edge. We've added those two segments there, which now gives us a new boundary. So when we use the Reshape tool, we can now reshape that new part of that object and actually snap it flush with that existing detail that we have there. All right, let's go into front view here. I have a nice view that's saved here. Is my home view here, sort of 5'9" from the front of the driveway here to get sort of a perspective view as we're looking at this building. And I'm going to add another wall on the side here. So once again, just use offset segment, whatever distance I want, and then reshape that out. And of course, to make sure it's flush, I can snap it right to the edge of that existing roof, and everything's nice and healed for us. Now, I want to create a little more of a layered effect. Maybe this second story will be a little bit higher than what this part of the building is. So if I go more of a top view here, I can actually extend a segment, snap to the edge here and click, and now we have a new boundary. So I can use the Reshape tool and reshape just that one part of the building. And looks something like that. That looks a little better, sort of a layered effect there. Now I do have some additional edges that are left over here based on the type of reshaping operations that you apply. One quick way to clean those up is use the Unmesh tool, and I just simply click on the object and it'll get rid of any segments that are in the coplanar surfaces on the object. Real fast way to clean those up. All right, we got some detail on the right-hand side, so let's have some kind of balance with the other side of our building here. So we're going to put the same kind of detail on this side. Once again, just use the offset segment to sort of extend that down and reshape that out a little bit. And now this area, I don't want to extend it all the way back to the back of the building. I want to just sort of extend the roof line just a little bit beyond that. So one technique I use is I just start offsetting a bunch of segments. So maybe offset this segment up here, offset another one up to that edge, and then take this vertical edge, offset that, and just sort of keep offsetting segments until you define the boundary that you want. Once you have that defined, you can then reshape that out, and now you can see we've sculpted just that one little section there. Now we have these extra edges that are there, no problem. Use Unmesh, click on the object, and all those extra edges are no longer needed, are then removed from that surface. Okay, there we go. So there's the basic overall conceptual design of our building. Now this is a solid object, so we can sort of think of this as a solid chunk of styrofoam. In order to see that, if I go to our clipping planes palette, click the little plus button there, and we can see that if I move that clipping plane throughout the model, it is a true solid object all the way through. Now, if I turn the clipping plane off, let's say I want to conceptualize where the windows are going to be and the doors and things like that. Well, I don't have any walls, floors, or ceilings yet. I'm going to actually add that later on, but I'm not ready to do that yet. I'm still in the conceptual stages here. So I just want to sort of do a quick sketch of where the windows are. A technique that I use for that is just simply use the drawing tools and draw right on the surfaces of the object. And I can use the insert option, and what that'll let me do is actually insert whatever I draw right onto the face of the object. So if I were to click, you can see I can pull out to add volume or push it in to subtract volume from the object. Now, if I push it all the way through, you can see I can actually punch a hole all the way through the object, but it's solid throughout. We don't have any walls yet, so I'm just going to recess it in just a little bit, maybe about 6 inches. Now, let's add some textures on here because that can help us to help visualize better our design. So maybe we'll put a stucco pattern on the walls here. So how do we do that? Well, look at your material palette up here on the right. I double click, and of course I can modify any of the material parameters. There's all sorts of materials that come with Form Z or Bonsai. We can go into the different libraries here. Here's some stucco patterns. You see something that you like, drag and drop it onto your material. Now your material takes on all of those pre-saved parameters. Now I can take my material and simply drag and drop it onto the object, and now that stucco pattern is now applied to that entire object. Now for the windows, I don't want stucco for the windows. I want it to be a transparent glass. So I created another material, and I drag and drop it, and I'm going to hold down the Command key on Mac or the Control key on Windows to apply it to just one face of that solid massing model that we have. So there we have a nice window that's sort of a sketching type window just to sort of visualize where these windows are going to be placed. All right, let's add another window area over here. So with that, let's select the drawing tool again. I'm going to And notice that as I'm moving my cursor over the objects, that my drawing grid automatically snaps onto that surface, which makes it really nice, because now I can draw anywhere on any part of the object. Now I want the height of this window to match the top of the second story over here, so I just take my cursor, snap it to the edge, and click. And now you can see the profile matches that height. And as I move it in, because the insert option's on, I drew a 2D rectangle and I'm inserting it inward. But because I'm just trying to conceptualize those windows, I'm just going to move it in about 6 inches. And there we have a nice little recessed area for that. For the window over here, use the offset segment. Offset a segment, snap it to the top there, and then use the reshape tool to maybe push that in a little bit to sort of define the window in that area. And then once again, I'll just simply take my little transparent glass material and assign it just to that face of the object. So now we have a couple of windows that are defined. Now we sort of get the illusion that we can actually see inside this building, and that's not true, because this is a thick, solid object all the way through. We don't have any walls or spaces yet. But you can see, because of the transparency of that surface, we are sort of peering into the back side of that object. Neat way to sort of visualize the windows that are there. Now, at this point, what if we want to make some changes to those windows? Let's see how easy it is to maybe modify the window size or placement of those windows. Just use the same tools. If I use the reshape tool, you can see I can select, just the face and drag that. Maybe take this face and make the window a little more narrow. Grab and reshape that, and so on and so forth. And if I want to get rid of the window, well, if I reshape, grab that face, and I'm just going to pull it all the way over, now that window's gone. So that real-time Boolean operations with the reshape tool is going to heal that geometry for me. Now, actually, I'm going to let that window come back, so I'm going to undo. And we can also move the whole window by itself. I'll just simply select the move tool, and it's going to try to move the whole object. So I just keep hitting the tab key with my cursor right there. And once it highlights the whole, then you can see I can actually click on it, and I can move that whole as an actual single entity of that object. Now this is one single solid object, but yet I can pick it at the whole level to be able to move the different parts of that object. Okay, and that's how easy it is to sort of conceptualize some of the window information here. So I'm going to fast forward here to add a few of the extra windows there, because it's the exact same operation over and over again for the next 3-4 windows there. So I'll save about a minute or two by showing those already done for you. Now at this point, let's add some other detail to this. Let's look at some other ways that we can quickly conceptualize our model by maybe adding some stairs up in the front section over here, and we'll use our stair tool for that. So with that, I want to use a vector line, and I want to draw it right from the center of the porch. Well, I can't seem to snap to the center there. Well, here's a quick way to resolve that. I'll use the offset segment. I'll click on this edge right here, and if I drag that across, I'll snap right to the end point there, and now I have a new boundary that's defined on that object. So if I were to select the vector line tool and make a little 2D vector line here, I can actually snap to the midpoint of that segment that's right there, because I've inserted that extra segment. All right, so let's click and drag that out, move it along the guideline, type in 9 feet, enter, and there's our line. That's just a vector line. That's going to be the path for our stairs. And then we go to our stair tool and just simply click on the path. And there's our stairs. It looks like we need to make a few adjustments here. No problem. Plenty of parameters to control those stairs. So I can go down here, click on the reverse direction button, so it goes the opposite direction. All sorts of control parameters to control dynamically the different parameters of that stair. So I can go down and maybe snap it to the top of the porch to make it the same height, or maybe drop it down a little bit lower if I want. How about the width of the stairs? Well, just grab this arrow, drag it out. I can actually snap to the porch, and now we know the steps are the exact width to match that porch. And there's plenty of other parameters we can play with here. Maybe let's try a different tread width, see what that looks like. All right, maybe put some tiles on there. Let's see what that looks like. Go to tile and sides option, turn things on and off, railings, whatever you want. And you can see we can update that as often as we want. Now that is a parametric stair. We can save the file, call it up later, and edit any of those parameters at any time. Since we have the tiles on here, let's go ahead and keep the tile option on there, and I'm going to add an additional tile to the top of the porch. Now I'm going to create a separate object. The reshaping tool up to this point has been reshaping the existing solid object, so it's really sculpting the same object and changing its form. I want a brand new object. So what I'm going to do is use the 3D extrusion tool, and with that I click on anything and I can extrude it into a 3D object. So if I click on an edge, a face, whatever's highlighted, I click, I drag, and it's going to make a brand new separate object for me. So as I pull it up, I can type in 2, enter. So now I know that's a 2-inch tile or a 2-inch slab. I want to make that overhang a little bit, just like the tiles on our stairs. So I'll use the reshape tool to sort of pull it out a little bit. I'll type in 2, enter. So now there's a 2-inch overhang over there. Click and drag this, type in 2, enter, and now we have another overhang on that side. So how's that? Pretty easy, huh? I'll tell you what, let's look at it from our front view here, and we're going to put a little water garden in this area as you're walking up to the front entrance of our house. Use the 3D derivative tool again. I'll just simply click on this boundary over here and drag that out to create a new object. So I know that object matches that existing boundary that I derived it from. And that looks pretty good, fills in that space pretty good. Oh, we have a little problem here. It's sort of intersecting through our steps. We can modify our steps, or we can just modify the shape that represents our water garden. So I can reshape that out a little bit to create a little gap, or I can also reshape this and snap it right to the edge of that step. And now you can see that we can get things to line up perfectly. So the Reshape tool is used both to create your 3D form, but also to do some quick editing to make things align by just sort of reshaping and snapping to existing objects, and everything lines up exactly the way you need it. All right, we're going to fill this with some water, so we need some kind of opening in here, right? So let's go to our offset outline tool, and with that, I'll click on any face boundary, and I can create an offset shape. Let's go in about 6 inches. And with that, you can see the insert option is on, so that did insert it into the top face of the object. So then I can just go to the Reshape tool and drop that down a little bit to scoop out the inside, so we can put some water in there. And to make this a little more interesting, let's put a waterfall in here. So what I'll do is maybe make a few other modifications to this. Let's use the Reshape tool, and I'm going to reshape this face out a little more like that. And I want to drop this section down a little bit, so I'm going to use the Offset Segment tool. Offset a segment by snapping to that edge. I'll click on this edge and drag it across and snap to the edge right there. Click. And now I can use the Reshape tool, and I can reshape just that new boundary that's defined by offsetting those edges. Okay, that looks pretty good for the waterfall. I'll tell you what, let's give a little slope to that. So let's use the Move tool. I can select topological parts by holding down the Command key on Mac or Control key on Windows, and now you can see that I can grab just a point, segment, or face and move it. So that's different than reshaping. Reshaping is Booleans. Moving is you're just moving the object, the segment or the face. Big difference between those two. There's this little slope for the waterfall. All right, let's add a couple textures on here. As I said, textures can be used as an integral part of your design, and because it's so easy to apply them here, we can go and do that. Here's another way to add those. So you can use the Paint tool, select the material to paint multiple objects if you want. If you want to edit the size or position of those textures, use the Edit Texture tool. Click on one of the steps here, and you can see I can actually modify the actual position of that texture, horizontal and vertical size of that texture that's on the object. Just sort of play with those arrows to control the size, and rotate it if you want also. You can actually click on different steps and move those tiles around to get the type of size that we want on that object. Tell you what, let's add a stone pattern to the bottom of our water garden here. This is one of the predefined stone patterns, so I'll just simply hold down the Command key on Mac or Control key on Windows, so I drag it just on one face of the object. So I got the tile assigned to the object, but I have stone just on that one face that's right there. Now we need to fill this up with some water. So let's use our 3D derivative tool. Click on the bottom face here and drag it up, and I'm going to create a brand new 3D object. If I snap to the top of the edge here, now I have a 3D volume that represents the water. So of course here's a water material that I got from our predefined material libraries. I'll add that so it looks like water in there. And at this point, making some progress here. The white stone tile looks pretty good, except I might want to have it more of a fluid flowing nature of the tile along the back side here. So maybe have the tile continue along the back of the garage, and I don't know, maybe even a vertical section up in here. Let's look at some different ways that we can do that. If I zoom in a little bit here, I want to make this water garden a little bit wider. How can we do that? Well, just use the same tools we've been using up to this point. Use the Reshape tool. I'll reshape that face out a little bit. So now see it's wider over there. Let's reshape this face inward that same distance. And my grid snap is set to 6 inches, so it's snapping to an exact 6-inch spacing. If grid snap's off, you can move it any distance you want. But in this case, the water, I can snap it to the edge. And there, we've just made that water garden 6 inches wider by just doing a couple of quick reshaping operations. And the reason I did that is so that the tiling can continue on along the front face of the existing stucco wall that's here. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's spin this around to this view over here and use the 3D derivative extrusion tool. And I'm going to click on the face here and pull it out. The whole face boundary of the back of the water garden is a little bit bigger than what I want. So let's escape and cancel out. So let's redefine that boundary by using the Offset Segment tool. Click and drag that offset, snap it to the edge of the wall here. Now I've inserted a segment, so now when I use the 3D extrusion tool, I can click on just that face that's there, and now I can get the exact size that I want. Snap it to the wall, and there we have our tile continuing on through the side wall there. All right, let's keep it going. That actually looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and offset another segment. Use the derivative extrusion tool again. Click on just that face boundary, and it's deriving a new object. As I'm pulling it across, I can snap to the end of the wall there, and now that fits perfectly in there. Let's create our vertical section of tile. So how wide do we want that? Use our offset segment tool and offset the segment maybe from here over 3 feet, 4 feet, whatever we want. The numeric information is up on top. I can type it in if I want, or I can just eyeball it, and then use our derivative tool once more to derive a new object by clicking on the face and pulling it up and creating another object for the tile. And of course, if we want to modify the size and spacing of the tile, we can use the Edit Texture tool to go in and modify how it's positioned on that object. That's pretty easy. Let's go ahead and look at our front perspective view again. I sort of like the white tiling to sort of balance this out. We have it all sort of shifted on the right-hand side here. So maybe we'll put a little more stone on this side over here. Once again, use our 3D derivative tool, take that existing part of the wall that's there, extrude that out to create a new object that we can then apply our stone tile to that. There we go. So now we got a little bit more balance with that tiling feature on the front facade of our building. Okay, now one more thing we might want to do here. We got all the stuff extending here on the left, the water garden, the steps. So I might want to create sort of maybe a little garden wall coming off of this main wall on the side of the garage here. So let's add a little detail for that. What I'll do is offset a segment, something like this maybe, right about there. Use the Reshape tool, reshape that out. I'm going to snap to the end of the water garden and click, so now I can extend that so it matches flush with that water garden. Now I want to create this as sort of a stepped wall as it's going up to the main garage here. So what I'll do is I'll offset a segment, click on this edge here, drag it across, and if I snap, I actually want to create 3 steps. Well, my default snapping is set to 2 intervals, so I can snap to the midpoint, but I can't get 3 different intervals in there. So how can I do that? Well, I'll just simply right-click the snapping tools, bring up the Snap Options palette. And of course, you can open up the Snap Options palette from the Palettes pull-down menu also. Either way will work. And here in the Snap Options palette, I can go in and change that interval, maybe set that to 3 divisions. So now when I offset that segment, notice when I snap, I get 2 green dots there. So you can see it's actually evenly dividing that segment into 3 intervals. So now I can go 1/3 along as I offset that segment edge. Well, of course, if you knew that distance, you could type in a number for that also. Now let's change this interval back down to 2. I'm going to use offset segment again. So now with this space divided by 2 intervals, I can snap to that one edge. And now I have 3 equal spaces there. Let's go ahead and reshape these down a little bit to create the little step effect. And there we go. Now, because we got the tiling on this end, maybe that might look pretty good by keeping that same tiling effect on this little step section. Let's go ahead and derive some tiling off of that to match it. So let's use the Offset Outline tool. And what I'm going to do is actually click on that face and create a nice little outline object. So I'm going to go out. I can even type in numbers if I want. And there we go. Now it's a flat object, and if I were to use the Reshape tool, I can take that new outline object, reshape it into a 3D object, type in numbers if I want for the thickness, and then we can drag a white tile texture on there and use our texture mapping tool to adjust the actual tiling pattern on there. Now if we want, now that we got the one defined, it should make it pretty easy, and because these are all the same size, we can just copy that onto the multiple steps here. So let's see a quick, easy way to do that. I can actually pick that object using the pick tool. Then I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to use the continuous copy option over there in the tool options. And then from here, what I'm going to do is start by clicking right here. So that's where I'm going to grab that object from, and then all I have to do is then snap to that point, snap to that point, and we can continually copy that by snapping to the different positions on those different steps that are there. And that's how quickly we can add maybe that side little detail that we have right there. At this point, we made pretty good progress with the overall massing model and the conceptualization of the windows. And let's move on to the next level. Let's add a lot more design detail. Let's actually create floors and walls and ceilings, sort of scoop out the inside, more of a detailed model. If we look at the clipping planes, let's turn that clipping plane back on for just a moment. That still is a solid object, right? So it's solid throughout. So how do we convert this into walls, floors, and ceilings? Well, there's actually many different ways of doing that. We're going to look at one of the methods here. There's an actual thicken tool, which can actually scoop out the insides and create walls and floors for you. But I'm going to actually do it using a manual process to show how you even have more flexible control over that process. So let's use the offset segment. Click on the edge here. I'm going to drag it over and snap to the vertical edge of the outside wall. So now I've inserted an edge that matches the outside of the wall of the space right here, so to compensate for that overhang that is there. So this face represents the inside boundary of that space. Let's use the Offset Outline tool, offset it about 6 inches, or whatever wall thickness we want. And then I want to use the Reshape tool. You can see I can reshape it inward, and I'm actually, with the real-time booleans, reshaping and removing, since I'm going inward, that whole part of that 3D solid object. I snap to the bottom of the wall, and we've actually hollowed out that entire object, and we have good, clean, solid geometry here when we are done with that operation. Let's try that again over here. Do the same operation again. Let's use offset segment, offset this one over to the outside wall. And the only reason I'm doing that is because we have that overhang there. If I didn't have the overhang, I wouldn't have to do that extra segment there, but I don't want to reshape it through this wall here, so I need an extra segment there that defines that inside boundary of that space. Let's use offset outline again. All right, and reshape. And as we reshape it through, we're actually subtracting all the material that's inside of that boundary there. So reshape it down, reshape it all the way through to create an opening all the way through, or I can maybe make it 1 foot off the bottom or snap to something else to sort of hollow out the inside. There we go. So now we have model converted into the inside cavity of our space. Our floor is missing here, so how can we resolve that? Well, let's use the offset segment again and snap to the bottom of the floor there. Offset segment again, click and drag, snap to the top of the floor right there. Now those two segments that we've added define a new face that we can reshape out to extend the floor even further. So let's keep pulling it out, and I'm going to snap to the end of the wall right there to make sure that it's flush with the end. And because it's the real-time booleans, it's healing all that geometry and fusing everything together to make a good, clean, solid object. Now that we have these spaces defined inside of here, we can then add more detail to these inside spaces. And so now it's just a matter of pretty much drawing walls. Use a vector line tool. You can use the wall option, maybe give it a wall thickness, maybe 6 inches. Click right there, drag it out. Let's give it a white color. Pull it out like that. And then as I move it along this way, maybe snap to the end of the wall, and then I can extrude that to any height I want. I can maybe type in a number if I want also. And there's our wall. If we want to insert a door, actually there's window and door components that you can just click right on the wall and automatically punches a hole there for you, places a door for you. But if you just want to conceptualize this, you can just use the drawing tools also. Just draw a shape with the insert option, push it through to subtract that part of the wall. We have a double wall here because of the way we sculpted out those inside parts of our rooms, so we can actually reshape that all the way through to subtract that, or snap it to the edge to sort of make that a single thick wall. I think you get the idea of how we can do that. Let's define the roof. Once again, we use our 3D derivative tool, and I want to derive from whatever's highlighted. Well, I don't see the top outline, so I just keep the cursor right there, hit the tab key until it highlights the outside outline, then I can click and drag and extrude that to create a slab which matches that inside boundary exactly. So now it's just a matter of pretty much moving that inside of that space. So let's click and drag and move that down a little bit. And there's our roof. We have a nice little parapet for the roof. So now that we've made the progress of scooping out the insides and getting our walls, our conceptual windows are now gone, because as we reshape through, it's got rid of that face for us. Now we have a true opening in that wall that's there, so we need to add more detailed windows here. And how can we do that? Well, we're going to use the same tools, use the derivative extrusion tool. I'm going to actually put my cursor in the middle, tab until it highlights the outline of that opening, and then I can click and drag to create a solid slab for a window pane. And I'm going to just maybe make it 1 inch. Let's give it a transparent color, something like that. Tell you what, let's give it more of a glass. That's the water. So let's give it glass. There we go. I'm going to change the grid snap to be 1 inch. And let's move that object that we just created out a little bit using the move tool, and grab that thing and pull it out. And you can see the effect of what happened here. So now I've derived a new shape that's 1 inch thick for the glass, or I mean, that's sort of thick, but give it the actual number that you want. But I'm going to push that in just a little bit so the actual window is inside that recessed area. And let's say we want to put some curtains or some blinds behind there. Here's a real quick tip or trick to quickly create a brand new surface that matches something else. We can use the move tool with a copy option, and then if I select just that face, I hold down the Command key on Mac or Control key on Windows, I can select just the face of that window pane, and because the copy option's on, it doesn't move the face. Now it makes a copy of that face. So now I have an object that matches that window exactly. And then I can create a transparency grid using the default materials. And then, of course, I can use the Edit Texture tool to further resize that, so that gives us the effect of shades. Move it wherever we want. And then we just simply take that new surface object that has that transparent grid that looks like shades, push it back closer to the window there. And from the outside, of course, that's going to look like shades. Or we even have default materials for curtains and things like that, or you can use your own. Now, to create the actual window frame itself, we can just sweep a profile along the perimeter of that outline for that opening. So let's create a 2D shape. And let's draw it right about here somewhere. It doesn't matter where we draw it. We can draw it anywhere that we want. Maybe make it a 2 inch square. And then using the sweep tool, I'm going to select that 2D square, select my glass or the outline of that hole, and it sweeps along there to create the framing members. And I think that gives you a pretty good idea of how you can quickly conceptualize a little more detail into those windows. And then if I do that same process over and over again for all the other windows, in about 5 minutes or so, you can actually go in and quickly derive the windows that are there. Now, I should mention that there is a window and door component tool in Form Z and Bonsai to quickly place windows that automatically punch holes in there for you. But if you're just conceptualizing, this is just one of the many other ways that you can actually do that. Now, the last thing we need to do is add a sunshade. And this is going to give us a few more little tricks on some things that we can do to work in 3D space inside of Form Z or Bonsai. Let's say we want to put a sunshade up on top of the window. So what I'll do is I'll start by drawing a 2D shape, which is going to be the mounting plate. You can see as the cursor moves across the surface, the drawing grid snaps to the surface, so I can draw anywhere on that. Now, how do I get a certain distance from the corner of the window here? Let's say I want that mounting plate to be exactly 1 foot above the window. How do I numerically get it there? Well, if you look up here, the XYZ positions are located up there, and that's the 3D position in 3D space. A real quick tip here is if I put the cursor right on the end, I snap, hit F4 key. If I hit F4, that makes it my new 0, 0, 0 origin right there. So now I can just simply type in 1 foot above that or move it 1 foot above there, and I can easily place the beginning of my rectangle 1 foot above. That's how easy it is. A second way of doing this is if I put my cursor right on the other end of the window, hit the Shift and Space key, it puts a temporary guide there. And these temporary guides, you can actually take the cursor and snap it to those guides, and now you can very easily draw anywhere in 3D space on any part of your model. And you can see those couple little things help you out to make sure things are lined up exactly the way you want them. Let's have some vertical support arms. So I'll use the 2D rectangle tool for that. Draw a little 2D shape here and extrude it out. Maybe something like that, maybe. And there it is. Now let's make a few copies of that. So what we can do is select the Move tool, multi-copy. We'll make 3 of them by dividing the distance. And once again, the automatic guides, you can see I can move those anywhere, but if I use that guide that automatically shows up, I can snap it right across on that guide, and now we can evenly space those across. Now here's one more trick to be able to build anywhere in 3D space. I can actually use the Edit Reference Plane tool. And you can see if I click on the tool down here at the bottom, it lets me move that reference plane anywhere that I want. So I can actually snap right to the end of our vertical support arms. Now our reference plane is actually moved. So now you can see I can actually draw right on that plane. So now if I were to zoom in here, select one of the drawing tools, if you want to lock it right there, you hit the F5 key, that locks the drawing plane. So as I move my cursor, it's no longer changing to snap to the faces, it's locking to the current active plane when I hit the F5 key. So now I can very easily draw anywhere. You can see here, I'm not snapping to any existing geometry, I'm drawing right on that plane somewhere in 3D space. So I can quickly draw that exactly where I want that piece to be. So there's a nice little sunshade. So then I can just maybe move, make a few copies of those, use my automatic guide to go back and snap those across, and there's our nice little sunshade. All right. So with that, to make the reference plane go back to the origin, click the little XY plane down here, and there we go. So now I'll just move and copy those shades over to the other part of the windows. And of course the driveway and sidewalk, those are just a bunch of boxes. Pretty much know how to create that stuff there. So the last thing we want to do before we render this is let's open up the sun position palette, and we can actually modify the sun position a little bit here, make sure we can choose any city, any part of the world, or just dynamically move that sunlight so it's positioned so it looks pretty cool. You can be accurate or just sort of play with it if you want. And once we have that sun positioned, we can click the render zone button and we end up with our final rendered images. There's a quick look at some of the fast and flexible conceptual modeling tools inside of Form Z and in Bonsai 3D. And I should stress, this is just a few of the many tools. There's a lot of tools in there. This particular presentation focused on just a few of those. If you want to check out some of the other presentations, be sure to check out our website at formz.com. Also check out us on Facebook and on YouTube. And this concludes the 30-minute model presentation.